My name is Bo Kilgore, and this is the Battle Tested Podcast. When you were in the military, did you guys have a saying, slow is smooth, smooth is fast? You ever heard that?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when handling weapons
Yes.
and ammunitions. Yeah.
So that's where I heard it most, was on the range, when we were doing live fire on the range, especially when you're having to reload magazines, because if you're doing a live fire range, you got to reload. A lot of times you're just trying to do it too fast, right? You try to do it too fast and it winds up taking you a long time to insert the magazine. But that slow is smooth, smooth is fast. The concept of that is understanding if you bring an intentionality and kind of approach things methodically, that you're going to build some muscle memory, some skill that's going to translate into you being able to do it quicker. Like it compounds to where down the line, you've done it slow enough that now you're smooth with it. And when you're smooth with it, you can be fast. And I really think that encompasses a life of discipline, is just deciding, okay, there are some things in my life right now that are a little out of control, whether it's my health or whether it's my emotions. Maybe my emotions are just out of control, and every time something doesn't go my way, I get in this funk for a week and I can't get out of it, So whatever it might be, understanding that it's going to take some intentionality for you to develop a life of discipline to help you in these areas. I talked about in early on in this season something called divine order. Like for you to live the way of the warrior, you have to align your life properly. I believe, and you might believe this as well, we have common faith, but I believe that when God created us, there's three parts of us. It's our spirit, the eternal part of us that allows us to have a connection with God, a relationship with God. It's what gives us consciousness. It's what sets us apart from the rest of creation. Then He gave us our soul, which is our mind and our will and our emotions. The Bible a lot of times calls it our heart. And then He gave us our physical body. I don't ascribe to the thought that my body is a prison for me, that I'm just in a prison of flesh and one day God's going to save me and I'll be an ethereal being. But I believe the Bible teaches when Jesus returns, we're still going to have a physical body. I mean, even Adam and Eve, before sin came into the world, God gave them a body to do His work in the world. So all three of these parts of our being, they're interconnected. I am spirit, soul, and body. And so if any part of that creation or any part of my being is out of order, my life is going to be a little out of order as well.
Yeah. Well, sorry to jump in.
No, go ahead.
But so the first thing that related to that really struck me is there's no such thing as a warrior who lives an undisciplined life.
Yeah.
Just isn't. Every true warrior lives a disciplined life. The reason for that is crisis always reveals character. 100% of the time, crisis reveals the nature, the character of a thing. So if I'm going to build character, that's a process. It's not an event. You don't wake up one day with more character than you had yesterday.
Yeah.
It is an intentional development. So taking the three parts of humanity, the building the character of the spirit, how are you training your spirit?
Yeah.
How are you developing your spirit? How are you communing your spirit unto God? How are you strengthening your spirit? How are you creating an avenue for your spirit to express itself?
Right.
Same with your soul. How are you, and your mind, your ability to gain and retain knowledge, how are you sharpening that? How are you growing that? How are you developing that? What are you putting in?
Right.
Is it a mindless, mind-numbing exercise of watching TV for 6 hours a day? Mm-hmm. Is it scrolling through TikTok and social media? Or do you have a destination that you're getting to? So you're gonna study to the best way to get there. And the same with your body.
Right.
You develop the character of your body through repetition, through work, by loading it. Mm-hmm. You told me today that you deadlifted a PR today of 500 pounds.
Yeah, just a quarter ton.
Huge.
No big deal.
Huge. So, but if you think about it, it's a personal record.
Yeah.
When you were 17 years old, you were probably more flexible than you are now. but you weren't as strong.
Yeah.
You've been working and working and working and working and working, and your body has responded. Well, your spirit's exactly the same. Your mind is exactly the same.
Right.
The more you work it, the stronger that it gets.
Right.
So when crisis comes, what will be revealed is the content of the work you have put in.
Right.
So the amount of development. If the necessity came, if your child fell under a couch, you were moving a couch in and the couch fell on top of your child. Dude, that deadlifting 500 pounds, you're going to throw that couch out of the way.
Couch, man.
But you know what? The person who has neglected their body, the person who has not strengthened their body, they can try. But crisis is revealing a weakness of character.
I saw a video recently of a mother, and this, I'm not trying to disparage anyone, but to that point that you're making, it was a mother who had their baby in the stroller, and she's trying to load the car. She forgets to lock the stroller, and the stroller starts rolling towards a very busy street, and she tries as best as she can to go after the stroller, but physically she can't. She's in a situation physically where she can't run fast enough. She actually falls down several times, and her baby is headed straight to this traffic. Thank God a stranger was nearby and grabbed the stroller. But to your point right there, she was not prepared for that crisis to step in and be able to save her child. But a lot of times what I've been telling a lot of the men at my church and different groups that I lead is when you understand this, I guess this divine order, this concept that, hey, your physical being is important to God. And right now, yes, we live in a fallen world that's corrupted by sin. We have sickness. There are diseases. There's things that can happen to our body, catastrophes, accidents, injuries that are out of our control. But that doesn't mean that we're in this body as some kind of punishment. It's still part of God's plan. And ultimately, in eternity, we're still going to have a physical body that we're going to do God's work with.
Well, think about, one aspect of your physical body. I'm about to go on a mission trip to Tanzania. It's arduous travel. It's difficult travel.
Yeah.
But if I didn't take care of my body, if I weighed 500 pounds and, had a variety of medical issues that were preventable, but I did not prevent them, then I'm telling God, I can't fulfill your mission, because I have elected to live an undisciplined life. And so now, and there are people who have afflictions and things that are beyond their control, but as it relates to me taking care of my body, it is completely up to me. I had a total knee replacement 4 years ago, and there's a guy that I know very well who had his 2 weeks after I had mine. Yeah. So same type of deal. But man, I've just always been that knucklehead that, like, I'm going to a PT, I'm asking, what's the record? Yeah. What you want me to do, lunges, what's the record? How long can I hold it? I mean, I'm going all in, man. I am.
This is a good part for me to ask about the Ironman that you did. Was that after your surgery?
No,
or before?
I've done 3, but it was before.
Okay.
But I'm training for another one.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So the deal with me is because I can't run anymore because of the replaced knee, I've got to get so fast on the swim and the bike that I can walk the marathon.
Wow.
But it's an objective. So, but you lifted 500 pounds today. Well, I did a 1 hour walk today. It's not deadlifting 500 pounds, but it's what I can do.
You're preparing yourself. Yeah.
I have a destination. If deadlifting 500 pounds are part of the Ironman, I'd be training that.
Yeah.
So I've got an objective, but the other man who had the knee replacement at the same time as I did, man, first of all, if anybody on this podcast, listen to this podcast, has had a knee replacement, you're a monster, because the recovery from it is so difficult. It hurts. I mean, it's just, I've never experienced anything like it. But when you encounter that difficulty, crisis always reveals character. Mm-hmm. So I have worked my spirit. I've worked my mind. I was focused on overcoming this. I was focused on not allowing this knee replacement to dictate my life.
Right.
But this other man had not really thought of it in those terms. The knee replacement, that was something that was happening to him. And he got the knee replacement done, and he wanted the path of least resistance. Yeah. He wanted the least amount of pain. Well, physical therapy after knee replacement hurts. Yeah. So he avoided physical therapy, and he avoided this, and he avoided that, and he stayed on painkillers, and he didn't face the crisis that was in front of him. Yeah. And today, I will tell you, my only regret about having a total knee replacement at 50 was that I waited too long.
Wow.
And His regret about having total knee replacement is this hurts worse than what caused him to need it to begin with, because he didn't face the crisis, because he wasn't prepared to face the crisis.
Right.
So of these three parts, are you preparing for the adversity that inevitably lies ahead, not only in your body, but the spiritual battles that we face? Are you prepared to face them? Are you prepared the mental battles that we face? Depression, anxiety, worry, fear, uncertainty, doubt, all these things that attack our mind and our soul. Are we preparing ourselves to face them? Because, the best time to train for those things is when you're on the mountaintop.
Yeah.
Because the valley's coming.
Mm-hmm.
So train while you're on the mountaintop. Prepare yourself for the valley that's ahead. Because when that crisis comes, your character will be revealed.
Right. This divine order, I make the point to a lot of people, sometimes if you're feeling disconnected or like you're in a rut spiritually, try changing something physically. Try changing your diet, or try exercising, or try just going on a walk, go outside, do something physical, because I think we lose sight of how spiritual our physical health can be.
There's a character in the Bible that not many people have heard of. His name's Shamgar.
Okay, I've never heard of him. And I'm a pastor. Is that bad?
That's terrible.
Oh,
no, it's
man.
not terrible. Almost nobody's heard of Shamgar. I mean, there's literally like 30 words written about this guy.
Okay.
He's found in Judges chapter 3. Shamgar was a farmer, and the Philistines had come in, as they often did in the Old Testament, and they just start taking over farmland. They go to this farm, and they take the house. They run the family off. They kill off the family. They take the animals. They take the crops, and they move to the next farm. And they're just absorbing territory until they got to Shamgar's territory. Shamgar had been preparing for this moment. And so the Bible says that Shamgar killed 600 Philistines with an ox goad and saved Israel.
Wow.
So an ox goad,
what's that?
It's a farmer's tool.
Okay.
So on one end of it, it's got a little spade, almost like a shovel.
Mm-hmm.
And it's what he would use to dig up his root vegetables. So he'd prepare the land with it, and he would dig up his vegetables. And the other end, it's a long stick. It's about 7 feet long. And the other end was a blunted point. So it was sharpened, and then they would blunt the point on it.
Okay.
And the reason it's called an ox goad is when the farmer would go out and he would work his land, he would work his crops. He's diligent with his body working the crops. He's following a planting season because he has the knowledge of when to plant and when to harvest. And he's doing this work, living the earth that God has given him, and he's fulfilling his obligation as a good Israelite to provide for his community. So he's out, and he'd fill his ox cart up with his vegetables. And then he would take his cart into town. But oxen are very stubborn, man. They're very stubborn creatures. So an ox would look over and he'd see like a plant or something he'd want to go eat.
Yeah.
So he'd get off the trail. So Shamgar would reach back, all the farmers would, and they would grab their ox goad and they'd pop that ox in the back of his head. And the ox would then oftentimes kick back. And that's why in the New Testament it's called kicking against the pricks. It's because it's a term that the farmers would use when they would goad the ox. The ox would then kick, so they would put like pointed thorns.
Okay.
So the ox would kick those and it would hurt his foot, so he'd stop kicking.
Mm-hmm.
So to get the ox's attention, he'd pop the ox in the back of the head, and the ox would get the message and get back on the path.
Yeah.
So can you imagine? There's a unit, there's a battalion of Philistines. They've had success. They've been taking territory and taking land and meeting minimal resistance.
Yeah.
And here comes this old farmer carrying a stick.
Yeah.
And they see him walking up. He's not trying to use the weapons that a military person would use. He would use the weapon that he was familiar with.
Right.
He probably sharpened the tip of that ox goad and maybe sharpened the blade a little bit. But he walked up, and I wonder at what point in time the Philistines took him seriously.
Mm-hmm.
After he killed 5 of them, or 10 of them, 50 of them, 100 of them.
Mm.
He killed 600 Philistines and saved Israel.
Yeah.
He's a farmer. He used what he had, and he did what he could do.
Mm.
When crisis reached his door,
Yeah.
he was prepared to face it.
That's good.
He did that by living a disciplined life.
Yeah, that's a good point to make about this character, because he wasn't a soldier, but he was still mentally prepared. His spirit was obviously right. He's a part of the children of Israel, the nation of Israel.
Yeah.
So this is his enemy. As much as it's a physical enemy, it's also a spiritual enemy.
Sure.
And he's ready to face that crisis.
But it just strikes me. Here's a character that we don't ever talk about.
Yeah.
And he saved Israel.
Yeah.
How many characters? Go through the Bible and find all the characters that their name is equated with saving Israel.
Yeah.
He's one of the only ones.
Yeah.
But what we learned from him, he used what he had,
right,
and he did what he could do. So I would say the encouragement to all men about living a disciplined life: aspire to be the best you can be.
Yeah.
Use what you have. I don't have 2 good knees. I'm not going to deadlift 500 pounds, but I can go do an Ironman.
Yeah.
So I'll do what I can do. You do what you can do, and I'll do what I can do, and I'll be the best version of me. I'll live a disciplined life spiritually. I'll live a disciplined life with my soul, mentally. Yeah. I'll live a disciplined life with my body.
And see, so coming back to this idea or this concept of divine order, why discipline is so important for all 3 aspects of that order, right? Our spirit, our soul, our body. I've lived certain times, maybe you can relate to this. I've lived certain times in my life where I had discipline with my body. I would go to the gym a lot. When I was in the Marines, man, my whole company, it was like 100 of us. We were the only people in that gym pretty much. I mean, everybody worked out. So I had a physical discipline with my body as far as how I exercise, right? And of course, we were going on runs and hikes and all that training. But I wasn't disciplined in my mind, my will, and my emotions. I wasn't disciplined in my spirit. I was not submitted to a higher authority, right? So having a discipline for part of my life did not equate to really living a disciplined life the way that we're talking about. Living the way of the warrior requires discipline in every aspect, in your spirit. It's being submitted to that higher authority, being submitted to God, His way, His values, controlling your mind, your will, and emotions according to God's way, and forcing your body to follow suit. Paul says it, take captive every thought. You rule over your mind. You allow what your mind dwells on and what thoughts are good and which are bad, right? You are the one that tells your body what it can have. You're not controlled by your emotions. And so I've lived life like that where I may have had an aspect of discipline, but not the kind of discipline that I need to live.
Yeah, I think you're touching on something really big, and this is a powerful point. Discipline without purpose is punishment. Discipline without purpose is punishment. So as a father, disciplining your kids without purpose is punishment.
Yeah.
For yourself, discipline without purpose is punishment.
Yeah.
So what objective am I going after? What's my purpose? Why am I bringing discipline to my spirit? Why am I bringing discipline to my mind? Why am I bringing discipline to my body? What is my objective? What am I trying to get to? What goal? And how does my goal, my personal goals, align with the goals that God outlines for His people? You can read Matthew 28:19. That is the great commission of Christ for every believer, to go into all the world and create disciples. Not just converts, disciples.
Right.
So if I'm going to be the best tool God can use in that effort, then I need to be disciplined in how I live my life spiritually, mentally, and physically.
Absolutely.
So I think remembering your purpose of why you are bringing discipline into your life. Because if you forget your purpose, you'll lose discipline. Yeah. Because nobody likes to be punished.
No. But discipline can also be freedom. It can either be 100%. Punishment or freedom. And
it's freedom if it's aligned with a purpose.
Right. Because I've set goals, like I've had times, even let's just say physical fitness. That's an easy thing when we're talking about discipline. I've had times in my life where I have tried to implement some kind of gym regimen and health regimen, but I didn't really have a goal other than I want to be healthier, right? That doesn't work for me. That's so vague. It's not defined. It's like, well, I just want to be healthier, so I'm going to go to the gym this many times a week, and I'm not going to eat these things. Eventually, that turns into feeling like punishment because there's no real reward that comes from that. But now my approach is 2 things. Now my approach with my physical health is, number one, as I realize it's connected to my spiritual being. It's connected to my spiritual health as much as it is my physical health. And if I'm going to do everything that God wants me to do on this earth in the time that He's given me, I've got to be healthy and capable to do
Yeah.
it. And the other thing I've done is I set goals, right? So like today, hitting that PR on that deadlift, like that wasn't by accident. I'm trying to work to certain goals that I'm setting for myself. And, eventually I'll get to a point where I'm not going to be able to lift beyond a certain amount of pounds, right? But at that point, I'm going to have a new objective. Maybe it'll be to run an Ironman, So having these tangible objectives where I can incrementally work towards them helps me then build in the discipline that I need. And it doesn't feel like punishment. It feels like freedom to do this or accomplish this goal that I want to accomplish, right?
Well, achievement is always linked to that freedom. What can you do? What am I trying to do tomorrow that I can't do today?
Yeah.
What is the thing that I'm chasing? What is the dragon that I'm going after to slay? What is that thing? They make fun of me at the office all the time because I talk about my team. We're a team of monsters, man. Yeah. We have a team of monsters, and we do. They are studs. But we're always going after an objective. So, and when I don't have an objective, when I don't have a dragon to slay, I'll invent one.
Yeah.
I'll create one. Like that's how Ironman came about. I was just trying to figure out what's, Mount Everest isn't in Texas. So what's the hardest thing in Texas?
Yeah.
Oh, it's an Ironman. Then I'm going to go do that thing.
Man, you're just looking for hard things to do.
Do hard things.
I mean, how much does that play into you building discipline as you like intentionally looking for the hard thing to do?
I will tell you when you pattern yourself, the behaviors of discipline going after a goal or an objective, you begin to realize the things that you used to chalk up as impossible are no longer impossible. Doing hard things lets you move the benchmark. Some of the greatest lessons you learned from the Marine Corps, I can guarantee you, are some of the things you did that you didn't know you could do.
Yeah.
Whether it's a number of push-ups or pull-ups, or whether it's enduring a long road march, or whether it's staying awake for so many hours, or being put in a situation where you realize you're stronger than you thought you were.
Yeah.
So now if I train that, how much further can I move that bar?
And there's such when you have those moments, okay, here's another one, like getting hit in the face for the first time. It's like you realize, oh, I'm not as fragile as I thought, right? And then, accomplishing these hard things that you're talking about, it's that feeling once you get through it that you realize, I can do this. I can do more of these kinds of things.
One important thing, and I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're good. Yeah.
I'm a storyteller, man. So I'll tell stories until you tell me.
No, I love it. I love it.
But that first Ironman that I did, it was 96 degrees. It was so hot, man. It was so hot. And I'm about 240 pounds, 238 at the start of that race.
Wow.
And it was 96 degrees, and I'm at mile 12 of the run. So I've swam 2.4 miles. I've ridden 112 miles on a bike, and I'm at mile 12 of the run, man, and I'm done.
Is it a 13-mile run?
No, it's a 26.2.
So it's a full marathon.
It's a full marathon.
Ooh.
So I'm at mile 12. And when I tell you I'm done, I'm not done like, oh, man, I'm really tired, I want to stop. I mean, like, I'd stopped sweating. And my body wasn't processing. I would try to drink something and it would just slosh in my stomach because all the blood had evacuated my stomach to try to cool my body. I'm at the point of heat stroke.
96 degrees. That's black flag PT conditions.
So I'm at mile 12, and bro, there's a porta potty at mile 12. And I don't need to use the bathroom. I just need a break. There's not a cloud in the sky, dude. There's not a single cloud in the sky. There's no breeze.
Yeah.
It's 96 degrees. It's May 18th of 2012. I'm so hot.
Is this in Houston?
Yeah.
Awful.
It's in the Woodlands. And so I go and I sit down on this porta potty, and I'm just sitting there. And I'm like, okay, man, you've gone farther than what anybody expected you to go. Your
body's trying to, your mind, you're trying to talk yourself out of it.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
And so then, you're in medical danger right now. You're
the responsible thing would be.
Yeah, man, dude, I'm talking myself into quitting. I'm hearing myself talking myself into quitting, but I remembered my why. Because 2 miles up the road, there was a 10-year-old girl.
Man.
And she didn't come to see her daddy quit. And so I remembered my why. And I'm sitting in that porta potty. And I'm like, I'm either going to finish, or I'm going to wake up in the hospital, well, I'm going to wake up in heaven, but I ain't quitting.
Dang.
So then I did what all good Christians would do. I tried to cut a deal with God. Yeah. I was like those foxhole prayers. I'm like, all right, God, man, I'm done, man. I'm not sweating. I can't take in any more nutrition. I'm shot. I'm shot. So, God, I need you to drop the temperature by about 10 degrees.
Yeah.
God, I need you to send a cool breeze, cool me down. And God, I need rain.
Yeah.
And if you don't let it rain on everybody, Lord Jesus, plant a rain cloud right over my head and just let me finish this thing.
Yeah.
Bro, I opened up that porta potty door and I stepped outside, and there wasn't a cloud in the sky. There wasn't a sniff of a breeze. And if anything, it was hotter. And I'm baked. And I just start walking. And I'll never forget it. This man, thick Spanish accent, another competitor, sees me walking. And he had been running. And he stops and he puts his hand on my shoulder. Dude. And he says to me, he's like, just keep moving forward, my friend.
Ooh.
He says, in a little while, the sun is going to go down and the temperature is going to drop, maybe 10 degrees. He said, there's going to be a cool breeze. It's going to blow from the north, and who knows, maybe it will rain.
Wow.
Dude, I get goosebumps now.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, there is no way. There is no way. God, I told God what I needed, but God knew it was the struggle that I was in. God knew I needed encouragement.
Yeah.
So he sent an encourager my way.
Yeah.
And the guy encouraged me. So I made it to mile 14 where my daughter was. And she's like, how are you doing, Daddy? And I'm like, this sucks so bad. But I'm so miserable, Bo. I'm cramping. I can't drink anything. I'm dizzy.
Yeah.
But I'm just one foot in front of the other.
Keep moving forward.
And all of a sudden, the sun went down.
There you go.
Bro, when I tell you, I felt a breeze.
Yeah.
And I started sweating. And I'm like, I'm starting to feel better. And it was at mile 19. And I get to the aid station at mile 19. I still have 7.2 miles to go, but I'm at mile 19. But I'm sweating and I'm hungry. I'm hungry and I'm thirsty. And they got like Snickers bars.
Yeah.
And they got like hot soup, like chicken broth.
Yeah.
And I'm drinking hot chicken broth and eating Snickers. And I'm bawling and crying. I'm just like, oh my God. And this lady's like, are you okay? I'm going to finish. She's like, yeah, buddy, you are going to finish. I'm like, you don't understand, man. I'm going to really finish.
She wasn't
today.
in the porta potty.
She wasn't in the porta potty, man. I was like, you don't get it. I'm like having my breakdown moment. The moment I thought I would have at the finish line, I'm having at mile 19. I'm still in my struggle.
Yeah.
But I know I'm going to finish.
Yeah.
And dude, that's that. I had an objective, and now I'm through the hellish landscape. Mm-hmm. It was in that race that I was going, and I'm guarantee I was the heaviest finisher of that.
You said 240 at the time?
Yeah, I was about 240.
Yeah.
And I go past this lady. It was a little bit earlier in the race. She's a big, heavy lady, and she's sitting under an umbrella, and she's sipping on her diet soda, and athletes are going in front of her. She's like, oh, and she's reading their bib number, and she's like, oh, good job, number 196. Take a sip out of her curly straw, and the next guy would come, and she'd be like, oh, great job, number 2112.
Yeah.
Well, my number was 2126, and she looks, and she double takes, and she sees me coming, and she stands up, and she's like, keep going, 2126. You've got this.
Oh,
you're representing a lot of people out here today.
You probably changed your life, man.
I am representing all the fat people. Yes, I am the representative. I'm like, I'm giving her hope. If that big fat guy can do it, there's hope for any of us. So
man, you're not fat. You're a big guy, man.
Dude, I was at mile 19, and like I had my moment while I was still in the struggle.
Yeah.
Right? I made it through the most difficult crisis, and I had the assurance now that I was going to finish. And I think that's the thing about living that disciplined life is you may still be in the struggle. But Galatians 6:9 is true, man. Don't grow weary of doing what's right.
Yeah.
For in due season, you will reap a harvest as long as you don't give up.
Yeah.
That's a powerful scripture for living a disciplined life,
right.
for being that disciplined warrior-based life in every aspect of your life. Don't grow weary.
Yeah.
Don't get tired of doing the next right thing. For in due season, that may not be today.
Yeah.
Just keep doing the right thing today. For in due season, you'll reap a harvest.
Yeah.
As long as you don't quit.
Right. And if you're living a disciplined life, like you've already made the decision when those moments come, because I think you're always going to hit that moment where you're trying to talk yourself out of something. You're trying to talk yourself out of, well, do I really need to stay consistent with this? Or is this goal really worth it? Or do I really want to live this lifestyle? You've already made the decision beforehand, like, no, I'm sticking with this. I'm going to finish this. I talked with someone on another episode about dealing with doubt. And like going through seasons of doubt, what carries you through that? And for him, it's my friend Andrew Blaylock. He talked about how he had already made up his mind a certain beliefs that he was going to live by. So he went through a season where he struggled with doubt when it came to his faith. He had big questions about God that nobody was really answering, but he just decided, you know what? My life is better when I follow Jesus, and the universe obviously has a creator. I'm going to live by those things no matter what comes my way. And he would go through these seasons of doubt, but not let the doubt take him away from those moments. It's like he's already made up his mind. He's already decided, this is how I'm going to live. This is what I'm going to do. And so when I'm going through the storm or I'm facing that adversity, I've already decided. Like the decision's already been made. Like for you, I'm going to finish this. I've already decided I'm doing this. My daughter's watching me. I'm going to finish. And so I think, having a disciplined life helps you get prepared for those moments. They're going to come inevitably, right? Everybody's going to face those moments of uncertainty or weakness or injustice. How are you going to respond to those moments? If you're not already living a disciplined life, if you're not already living with this kind of order in your life, it's going to be very hard to respond the right way whenever you face that adversity.
Yeah, have you ever heard of the FUD factor?
No.
FUD is fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And it was used I first learned it in the business world. When a competitor would have the business that I'm trying to win.
Yeah.
So they have an incumbent provider for their services.
Uh-huh.
And I'm trying to become the new provider. The 800-pound gorilla of our industry, the industry leader at the time, they employed this tactic called FUD. And this fear, uncertainty, and doubt. They would go to the customer and say, yeah, they may be able to save you money, but man, what's the cost of change? You're going to have to train your people on new technology.
Yeah.
They're going to lose efficiency. We have the unrivaled service. They may save you $1 on the front end, but the service cost on the back end is probably going to be high. Nobody has our service. And they would plant thoughts of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, even though their product cost more.
Yeah.
They would retain the business. They would prevent the customer from changing. And I've thought about that as it relates to how the enemy of our faith works. Trying to convince you that the cost of living a disciplined life, the cost of change is too much.
Right.
The cost of investment in living a disciplined life. So he does it through fear, uncertainty, and doubt. The fear of what will happen if you make these changes, the uncertainty of whether or not these changes of your life, of living a more disciplined life, are really going to pay off.
Yeah.
And the doubt in who are you to think that you can aspire to be greater than what you have been up to this point.
Yeah.
It's this fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And discipline is always the answer.
Yeah.
Spiritual discipline.
Yeah.
Discipline of the soul, discipline of the body. It's always the answer to FUD.
And you have to have objectives. Like I said earlier, you can't just have a vague idea of, well, yeah, I'm going to live discipline because I know it's good for me. You have to identify some objectives that you're working towards. And I think that will help you incorporate discipline into your life, whether it's physically or whether it's just learning how to respond to different situations emotionally the right way.
I think everybody needs to be actively conquering something.
Yeah.
So a couple of my folks made fun of me a few years ago. I decided I didn't really have a dragon to conquer. It was when I was going through my knee replacement.
Okay.
I'd never been a coffee drinker. And being in the military, how rare it is that somebody's not a coffee drinker. I remember guys, as we're getting ready to go in the main invasion in the Middle East, guys ripping open their MRE, taking the coffee packet out,
just
pouring the grounds in their mouth, and sucking it down with some water. I'm like, you guys are insane, man. And I was never a coffee drinker. But I'm going through, knee replacement, and I'm like, man, I need a dragon to slay. Yeah. I'm going to like coffee.
Yeah.
And I just decided I was going to like coffee. So I started drinking like Starbucks soccer mom drinks, man. I started with like cinnamon dolce lattes.
Yeah.
You know, and I would sip on it. It was sweet, and just that bitterness of coffee. I'm trying to get used to it, and so it became an objective for me. I'm gonna like coffee.
Yeah.
And it's a meaningless pursuit, somebody might say. It keeps me in the habit of conquering something.
That's good.
It keeps me in the habit of going after something.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember, is it tied to an objective? Is this going to make me ultimately better? Well, it's keeping me in the practice of conquering something.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't come against my spirit, if it doesn't come against my mind, my soul, if it doesn't come against my body, if it's not going to destroy me, if it's not going to damage me, and it's a worthwhile pursuit, then it keeps me in the habit of conquering.
Habit. To quote the great Og Mandino
from
the book that you have given me that I am slacking on, but I'm going to get on it. He says, if I must be slave to habit, then I will be slave to good habits.
Yep.
Right?
Yes.
So, I mean, if you're someone who's undisciplined, guess what? You have habits.
Yes,
like
you're
a slave to habits. They might not be healthy, but you might be a slave to Netflix or video games or fast food or pornography or other kinds of substance addictions. You're going to have habits in your life. So the discipline is what helps you create good habits, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So one thing I want to do before as we wrap this up, I always like to give people some practical applications. You know, we've identified the challenge. You know, it's not, we don't naturally drift towards living a disciplined life, right? We associate that word a lot of times with punishment. So we want to change our view of discipline, or the lens that we see discipline through. It's not punishment, it's freedom. So the path to growth is identifying, okay, I need to incorporate some discipline into my life, physically, financially, emotionally, spiritually. So what are some practical things, if you want to touch on maybe one practical thing for each of those in your physical life, in your soul life, and in your spiritual life, what are some disciplines that people can start today applying to help them live a disciplined life?
Well, one thing I would recommend, and I recommend it for everybody, is to read one proverb a day.
That's good.
Take you a month. So establish that as a goal. It's not overwhelming. You're not making this giant commitment that you're going to do some magnificent spiritual endeavor. You're literally going to read one proverb per day.
One chapter?
Yeah, So Proverbs 1 today, Proverbs 2, or correspond it with whatever day of the month it is.
Yeah.
You know, so if today is the 18th, start with Proverbs 18.
Yeah.
And then 19, and then just go. It's an easy way to keep track.
That's good.
That is a short-term spiritual objective that will grow your faith.
Yeah.
Read the Proverbs.
Yeah, that's good.
I think mentally, read 10 pages of nonfiction every day.
That's good.
So if you're going to do the Proverbs, that doesn't count.
Yeah.
Read 10 pages of nonfiction every day until you finish something like a biography. So I love the presidential biographies by Chernow. Those are great.
Yeah.
But just read 10 pages every day. It's not overwhelming.
So I can't read Star Wars or Lord of the Rings? That's not going to count? No?
Read 10 pages of nonfiction every day. That's a great mental pursuit. How do I keep my mind sharp? I'm reading history. I'm reading a technical magazine. I'm reading something that interests me, but it's nonfiction, and I'm reading 10 pages every day.
Okay.
That's going to keep my mind the mindset of a learner.
Mm-hmm.
Keep introducing new information into your mind, and that will keep you a lifelong learner.
That's good. That's what I talked with Dr. Landon Galloway about, as being a lifelong learner. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know at what point in time we think we don't need to learn anymore.
Yeah.
But intentionally read 10 pages. So the first thing is read a proverb a day.
Yeah.
Second thing is another reading exercise. Read 10 pages of nonfiction every day. The third thing I would say is identify establish a rule for your fitness and for your diet.
Yeah.
Start with one rule. So I have a rule. I don't eat grain.
Okay.
So that means no bread, no rice, no corn. I didn't start with that rule, but that's a rule that I have now. And it keeps me disciplined, and it keeps weight off, and it keeps inflammation down in my body.
Yeah.
And I've got a couple of other rules. And then I'm also active for me, it's 90 minutes every day because I have an objective. So I have, like I did a 60-minute walk this morning. I'm going to do a 60-minute bike ride this evening.
Okay.
Because I have an objective. So that's part of a training program. But I would say if you can intentionally establish a rule that is every single day, that you don't get a break from it. Yeah. Maybe it's a 30-minute walk every single day, 30 minutes of stretching every single day, but you establish a rule. What I found, like with dietary pursuits, they don't work for me. Because I'll cheat on the diet, or I'll come up with workarounds, or this is on my diet, but I overeat it. So for me, rules work better. I'll come in and say, for this period of time, no grain. Not one stitch. If it's grain, I don't eat it. That works for me. So I think if you establish hard and fast disciplines, like one proverb a day, not overwhelming, take you 5 minutes. 10 pages of nonfiction might take you 20 minutes if you're a slower reader. And then one dietary rule, one physical rule. They don't have to be the most hardcore things. Just establish a rule.
Oh, this goes back to what we were saying earlier about the slow is smooth, smooth is fast. I mean, you're building, by incorporating these rules that you're talking about, the daily reading of Proverbs, reading 10 pages of nonfiction, establishing some simple rules for your diet and exercise. The big benefit there is you're building some good habits, right?
Absolutely.
That you'll be able to grow on. So I think that's incredible. This conversation has been awesome. A lot of fun. I really appreciate you joining me for this. I think you're incredible, man. The first time I ever heard you talk was about that Ironman. That story of you wanting to quit and pushing through, and it's just an inspiring story. And I appreciate it so much. With Battle Tested, just one last thing in closing to give you context about what, my thinking behind this and the purpose of it. In Nehemiah 4, Nehemiah is leading the effort to rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, right? People are coming back from exile. The city's been destroyed. It's in ruins. They're not even living in Jerusalem. They're having to live outside the city because it's got no protection. So Nehemiah is leading the effort to rebuild. And as they're rebuilding, they keep getting attacked. So his solution, he's got this very inspiring speech where he rallies the people. He says, don't fear the enemy, trust in God. And then he says, you need to fight for your families, fight for your wives, your daughters, your sons, your neighbors. And then he says, from now on, everybody that's building, you're also going to carry a weapon. And whenever you hear the horn sound, you're going to go to the sound of the horn, and you're going to have to fight. And I think that's such a picture of life. That's the reason for the Battle Tested podcast. The logo even is a hammer and an axe. It's a tool and a weapon. Because the picture of life is you're going to be building towards your goals. You're going to be building towards the purpose that God has for you, or the life that you're envisioning for yourself. But you better be ready to fight, because there's going to be resistance. There's going to be spiritual attacks. There's going to be our spiritual enemy trying to keep you from your potential, from your purpose. And so you have to have that mentality of the warrior, the way of the warrior, that you're building and that you're fighting. You have any thoughts on that at all?
Well, just one. And you do such a great job explaining it, and I love it. I love what God's doing with your life.
Thank you.
And with this podcast, with your ministry. You're doing great things.
Thank you.
You're doing hard things. And I respect that. One of the things about Nehemiah that I love, what could get him off the wall? What could get him off his purpose? Nothing. Not his friends, not his enemies, nothing. What would cause Nehemiah to quit? Nothing. Nothing. Not being tired, not the threat of enemy, not the cajoling of friends, nothing. Nothing could get him off his purpose. It was
already decided for him.
And so he went and got the resources he needed. He got the endorsement of his king. He went and rallied the people who lived around the broken walls every single day. They lived around it every day. But he had purpose. And when people saw his purpose, they then developed purpose. And what would pull him off his purpose? Nothing. Nothing would pull him off his purpose. He would have to get ingenious. He would have to, the idea of coming up, we'll have a horn, and with the horn we'll carry a weapon and a tool. And he didn't read that out of a book. It was the landscape. It was what he needed to be innovative with. He needed a way to equip his people, because nothing would stop him from his purpose.
That's good.
And I think when we can develop the mindset that there is nothing that can prevent me from living the life God imagined for me.
Yeah.
There's nothing that can prevent me from being the type of son of God, husband, father, son that I need to be.
Yeah.
Nothing can stop me. Then, man, we've harnessed something right there.
Thank you so much for checking out this week's episode of the Battle Tested Podcast. I encourage you, if you want the extended edition of that episode, the uncut version, you can check that out by joining our Patreon. The link for that is in the description below. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at battletested.pod. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, and we'll see you next week here on the Battle Tested Podcast.